Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week we spend all of our entire week only thinking of ideas for this next story. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we're here to tell you a story. Well, this is episode, I believe, 3. Seth, you want to give us a little recap?
All right, so I think this is like a New Dawn 2 or something like that, because it was a sequel from the previous story.
Yeah.
So if you want to catch up on what it's a sequel to, go listen to that story and then come back. But ultimately, our heroes are on the sister planet and kind of navigating their way through there.
No, this new one's called The Fallen Sky.
The Fallen Sky.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Okay, yeah, that's better. So anyways, but it's a sequel to the last one that we did just before this.
Yes.
The sequel would be. And so our group of heroes is on the other planet. It's been maybe a couple years over here as they're kind of, moving through the calamity stage of this planet.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like in Arrakis. I don't know, I think we had a couple other...
Yeah, I said 40 years in the desert, Arrakis, Aiel Waste, kind of a terrible existence.
Yeah, really, really harsh environment. And of course, it is after, the post-calamity that they suffered. Most of the people that populate this world are either the warriors or the direct descendants of the warriors that went up to the mountain to confront the top master guy who then either went over there himself or sent these people, over to this planet to kind of prep the way, see what's going on, whatever. I don't know. Maybe that's why we needed a prophecy so that we knew what it was they were preparing for.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's kind of what we got going on here. It's extreme warrior class, roving, no huge settlements. That's kind of the setup we've got. The villain in this one is actually the villain's sidekick from the last one, who's kind of progressively kind of got full of his, science. And I think he is dealing with the reoccurring character, kind of a Asmodeus kind of character from one of the other stories we did, who's kind of like a, I don't know, demon guy.
Who was he, Reed?
Lord Ravenous. He was
Ravenous.
He was a demonic figure, and he is kind of like if you think of oh, come on, I can't even come up with the name.
The Goa'uld from Stargate?
Yeah, right, exactly. And he's kind of passes himself off among primitive peoples as kind of a godlike figure because they're so advanced. But he has like control of like a dozen different people groups, most of whom are like just primitive people on a single planet. But there's a couple of his realm, so to speak, that are more advanced multi-planet organizations. But he has taken an interest in the planet from these two planets, from the New Dawn and the Fallen Sky, and hoping to find, place to hold sway. He tends to be, he thinks lesser beings were kind of made to be ruled, and his specialty is subjugation. And he's a charismatic kind of guy. He's skilled at appearing, really physically beautiful. He's sly, manipulator. Anyway, so he's made his advance. He hasn't really done much yet. He's just checking the whole situation out to see if there's a situation he can exploit. Now, but the Quincy is the scientist guy that came here from the other planet, and I don't know.
And he kind of specialized in like trying to open these gateways and these ways and kind of these doors. And I think that's how he kind of got into contact with this
Lord Ravenous.
Lord Ravenous guy.
That makes sense.
And so he's here kind of, pulling his group of outcasts and, vagabonds. And then you have our heroes now trying to traverse this kind of wasteland. On this side, the magic system kind of set up with after kind of the calamities, it led in like these yeast cultures, not like yeast culture, but kind of like that, where if anyone's familiar with brewing, the way that the yeast cultures kind of consume the sugar and turn it into alcohol. These things are kind of as I think, Levi, you put it, like the angelic drivers of life.
Kind of like
in the universe.
The engines of creation.
Yeah. And so they would, create something by eating, feeding off of something and then turning it into something else. And that's kind of what they're used for here, is to, making, potions, and doing all kinds of different stuff. So you feed them the right stuff and they'll create, either a potion or make something stronger, or completely eat something, like, because I think there's no iron.
Yep.
Right? No iron on this planet. It's just something that they've completely consumed.
Because when the original inhabitants of the planet left their planet, they broke through the firmament, and now these kind of free radical beings are now pouring in, and that's what's kind of changing the world into this kind of terrible, desolate area, because they're just kind of destroying everything.
And so I think, and then as far as one of the things that got set up is that I don't know if it was a particular thing or if it's just something that we set up. The chunks of the firmament that fell, they're like giant chunks of this glass. And so then when these warrior people, because most of the weapons that they brought over are all deteriorated because these things have, consumed them up. But kind of like their rite of passage or their thing is to go off and they have to find, bits of this, firmament that's fallen onto their planet and then chip off parts of it to bring it back to then reforge that kind of, not necessarily like a glass, but kind of like a glass, and either through napping or like a special process that they create their weapons out of those pieces of the firmament. I think not the Dawn Treader, but
the sea biscuit.
The Ocean Flyer. How about that?
The Ocean Flyer. It's here, and because of the kind of the special metal from the other world it came from, it is kind of,
it can sail,
ocean song or whatever.
It can sail.
Say whatever that sounds. Yeah, it can sail kind of across this kind of desert landscape. I think that's kind of cool. And unless I'm missing something extremely important, that puts us in about where we're kind of coming to today.
Yeah. What story elements did you guys have for this?
I have a unique artifact.
I have a unique weapon.
And I have wild card. Should I say the wild card? I'm going to say the wild card.
If you want to. Yeah, go.
You guys tell me if I interrupt anything that you guys have created. So one of my story elements from last week was the fighting style, and part of that was the creation of these weapons made out of this kind of obsidian glass, which is really the firmament. But part of that is also the fact that each clan has their own each clan or group has their own, or dojo kind of, has their own special cocktail of potions that they use, right? So you would sort of know by a way a person acted or a way that they were dressed. It's like, oh, this is a speed 2 strength 5 grit 1 guy, based on like how, what their clothes are, and they have like a cocktail that they have tweaked of these various potions to consume and therefore kind of augment their fighting style in a specific way. And so just being able to see people and knowing how they act and, what clan they're part of, you can kind of strategize how you're going to attack them, because a guy who has keenness 10, right? So 10 parts of his potion have a keenness potion, which means he can see like things at a much faster and has much wider field of view. You're like, I can't sneak up on that guy, so you just know that. The wild card is that the hero does the taboo thing accidentally. So the taboo thing in the magic system of these potions is to encourage the cultures to live inside of you, so that what you eat, they're changing it constantly, right? And he does this accidentally. He didn't mean to do this, but somehow he maybe drinks a potion before all the cultures had been removed or before they were done. Somehow accidentally he consumes them, and so they basically live in his stomach and in his gut now. And this is considered taboo because these beings, these cultures, these angels, these engines are kind of semi-worshipped in a lot of ways. To have one inside of you is considered really disrespectful and unholy. Some people are more religious about it. Some people are more scientific about it, but this is what he did. And it was a total accident. But what he found out was that when they were inside of him, they started to support him specifically. So you could take a speed potion and get, maybe 2 or 3 times faster than your normal sort of speed output of your body. But when he consumes the materials for a speed potion, right? So it's a bit of bark, some of this, specific beetles, antenna, and, some of this weird fruit dried up, right? Which typically you would mix together and then put the cultures inside and it would create speed potion. When he eats those things together, because these things live in his gut, they know who he is. Therefore, he receives 10 times speed from it, right? But this isn't like he's just automatically the most powerful character, because he also there's the fact that his gut is a biome of a lot of things, and there's also the fact that these creatures don't just produce something by itself. There's off-gassing. There's whenever you mix chemicals, you don't only get the one chemical that you want, you get a lot of other things. So this whole story, he's very carefully learning. So his diet is really strange, He has pills, he's made pills with release casings, that'll break down after a couple of minutes to a couple of hours. So he can take them and then in a couple of hours, all of a sudden get this boost of speed or whatever. And as he sort of as the story progresses along, there is some kind of communication between, because I don't know if you guys know this, but there's actually a lot of connection between your gut and your brain. And this communication between these engines, these angels, these microbiomes or whatever they are, he starts to be able to manage it himself. Right? He starts to be able to mix crazy concoctions together and get crazy results, So my idea is that by the end, he's just eating tons. He's just eating all the time. He's just new type of food. Here, give that to me, and he's constantly eating things. He'll try any drink. By the end of it, my idea is that he, in fact, poisons don't affect him anymore, right? By the end of it, he is able to basically, he could take a poison and it would get into his gut, and then he can feel the effects, and then he can basically tell his body or tell the microbiomes that are existing inside of him to break it apart into its requisite parts, And so this isn't the beginning of the story that he can do all this. But by the end of it, my idea is that he basically can create anything. It's just, does he have enough material for it,
I have a really funny visual, because just before we started recording, I was watching, actually for the first time, I think the 2023 movie, The Flash.
Yeah.
And he has this whole metabolic thing that goes on where he's got to just super carbo load in order to do his Flash thing,
Right.
And that's what I'm picturing here, is this hero guy just slamming, Red Bulls and whatever it takes to get this whole engine going,
Right. And I would almost see it as maybe a bad thing at the end.
Yeah.
Maybe he has one of the reasons why you don't want these things living inside of you is that they start to eat you.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's it passes a point where I have this idea, he ramps up in power really crazily, and then he tries to go back and just be normal again.
Yeah.
And the microbiomes are wait, no, I want those things that you were giving me. And so then he has to start eating continually. So he's always eating now.
Yeah.
And always producing these weird things. His hair is constantly changing color because the things are making all of these different potions, which are changing the color of his hair. And it's just a potion, you have some ketchup and some potatoes, and some pepper, and it makes a color changing potion. And it's super common, but he eats food, and then his hair just is constantly changing because it's always constantly making these little doses,
We need to give this one a name. We need to give him a name. What should we call him? I'm stuck. I'm stuck with Barry because of the Flash. But
I was just thinking of Barry because of the Flash. I also kind of like Charlie personally.
I think Charlie. What a great name for the guy. Okay.
So part of the end result of this is that he is going to he's gonna die if he doesn't find some way to get cured of this, right?
Yeah.
So whatever the villains are doing and whatever the end result is, there's also the chance that he just doesn't make it, because if he can't find a way to sort of resolve this, then that's it, So maybe there is legends about I don't know, my brain was thinking like, well, what do you do when you have a bacteria inside of you that's not good? Well, you take an antibacterial and it just kills it all, you know? So something like that, or radiation, you know? It's like if you receive a high enough dose of radiation after you die from that, your body also will like not decay for a while because all the bacteria is dead.
Yeah.
And so your body will just like sit until like the radiation is low enough, you know?
Mhm.
Either of those two as options I was thinking about would be cool.
I have an idea for what the answer is, but I'll hold off for a second and see what Reed's unique artifact is.
Okay.
Oh, good point.
Well, I'm going to introduce another character, one of the heroes, and he is, he was one of the swordsmen that climbed the mountain and got to that plateau at the top of the mountain and went to the structure in the middle and had the encounter with the guardian of the gate or whatever, and then the stone giants are awakened.
Yeah.
And so he was teleported through to this world and joined the group there, but he is fascinated by this whole, the stone giants, and this civilization has been wrecked, but it clearly had a structure, where they worship the pantheon, they worship these godlike creatures who in the past had the first ones that learned how to inhabit and control the stone giants.
Right.
So he has been really looking through ruins, and he comes from a clan. They specialize in strength potions, which is helpful for him if he has to lift heavy things and stuff and whatnot. But and also in fighting, obviously, strength is good. But anyway, the way this worked out, he was the guy. I'm calling him Crassus. Like I just thought a good name for a gladiator. Called him Crassus. Anyway, he found the wreckage of one of these stone giants that apparently had like toppled off a cliff, and it's just kind of crashed. And he was like, it was kind of half broken apart. It was obviously a long time ago. And he came across what he found was a control module, literally that enables the user to enter and manipulate these specific rock formations to organize it into one of these these stone giant warriors.
Right.
So this guy's found this artifact is actually this control module, which tends to point to the fact that it was literally technological in the beginning, which is now just dwindled into myth and legend, of course. And, that is associated with the gods, because of these. I mean, they're hundreds of feet tall and they're insanely powerful and, all that. So anyway, that's the artifact is he's got this module and he's trying to figure out how to work it.
One of the things I was thinking of as what the heroes are doing, I think what they're doing is they're looking for the original mountain man, right?
Yeah.
Because they came to the mountain to get answers, and, Charlie's reason to come to the mountain was to challenge him. But the answer that they got was, I am not the original one. He left hundreds of years ago, and then so that's one of the reasons why they traveled over there, because here's a guy who has kind of ancient knowledge.
Right.
So that could be one of the things that they're looking for when they're over there is like, where are you at? When people say they've seen him, or people say they know him, or people say that he's their father or whatever, and it's kind of like sorting through all this information, traveling around to different settlements and talking to different people and trying to find him. And there could be some reason why, he has answers. He knows how to fix it. They think he knows how to fix it. I don't know why they're trying to find him, but that could be one of the things they're looking for. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Okay, so taking all that information, I'm going to segue it into the unique weapon, which I think might answer some of these questions.
Okay.
The unique weapon is a stone giant suit, but instead of stone, it's made out of the shards of the firmament.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But it's what this main guy has been working on, and maybe it's not him because maybe he hasn't lived these several millennia now, but he's always left a successor, right?
Right.
But it's missing the control module.
Of course, yeah.
And so one of the things that in looking for him, when they find him, they find his thing is like, his lab, his place, and that's what they find, this suit that's put together, but it's missing the control module factor. The thing I had from earlier that I said I was going to wait for Reed has to do with this a little bit, but then with our hero, one of the ways that he could counter it, I was at first was thinking that he could then eat part of this firmament and it would negate the that foreign element. Because what was that firmament doing in the first place but protecting this planet from that foreign element?
Oh, right, yeah.
And perhaps that's what ends up happening is then they use the control module to basically give life to that suit. He then, I don't know how it would be that he would consume the suit, but if he's so consumed by these things, accessing the suit then makes him one with that suit.
Right.
Or
And they just can't abide being near it or whatever.
correct.
The other thing I was thinking of on that is that it could be that, and they're trying to figure out how, and he's tried eating it and it just makes him sick, and eventually he gets stabbed with one of the swords, and that just does it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like he has the suit, and maybe when he's wearing the suit, the effects of it are gone. But it's like, what is he going to do? Wear this suit for the rest of his life, you know, and be a, 400-foot tall giant for the rest of his life, And then close to the end, they're fighting with, the villain is there. Remember the original villain, he has kind of tried to turn his life around a little bit and has kind of a oasis kind of place for people to be. And then Quincy has turned into the villain and is listening to Lord Ravenous, and Lord Ravenous is trying to maybe push him on to launch the rest of the ships towards the other planet.
Yeah.
Or open the portal so that he can then access this place.
Yeah, that could be it too.
Because why take ships if then he can have somehow the coordinates between where he is to here, and then he can just come here.
Yeah, I have this kind of idea, right, that most planets do not have a firmament like this. There's something about these two planets that make them set apart, right? Maybe it's something to do with Lord Ravenous and the other kind of system lords that he kind of fights for control with. There's something about these two planets. I kind of have the idea that these two planets are the farthest out on the solar system opposite each other, right? And something about them being opposite each other with these firmaments kind of maybe shields the whole solar system.
Yeah.
From
and
Lord Ravenous. And now that the firmament is broken, he can kind of project his image in. So that's why he's not helping Quincy with like the millions of like soldiers he has, but he's just like talking to him and appearing because he can kind of cast his image in, but he can't actually get there yet until the firmament falls more or something else happens. There's something else that needs to happen before Ravenous really wants to move in. He would never play the part of a villain's sidekick. He's never going to be the villain's sidekick, but he seems like he's the villain's sidekick because he can't quite access it yet. This is another case of this oftentimes happens in history of people being subverted by a much more powerful force, but the much more powerful force uses that weaker kind of maybe innocent or not as bad looking force to appear normal or to appear reasonable until it's time to just crush Quincy and Lord Ravenous take over,
Yeah, kind of nasty.
Yeah, and Quincy, I would say, learns too late that you shouldn't trust anybody when you're dealing with like being a terrible person.
Yeah, like sometimes the bad guy is really a bad guy.
Yeah. Thanks, Satan.
Yeah.
I was just referencing a movie. I can't believe I just did that. Anyways, so what's our resolution, do you think? Because they're kind of so we have this story. It starts out they're on this new planet. It starts out where they're just getting over, and there's kind of a falling out, and Quincy goes one way with some people and the villain goes another way, and then our heroes and stuff go a different way with the Seabiscuit, right? And then
so I think
let me just run
an idea. Okay.
Let me just run this up here real quick. And then it cuts forward a couple of years, right? And it cuts to the scene where they're chipping away at the firmament thing and making the weapon. And that's where you get kind of the download onto that. They take the Seabiscuit to a different fortress, and there's some of that. And you start to see what Charlie has done. And you get introduced to kind of the magic system, and then it kind of starts ramping up as they have their mission to go and find this guy, and so they're traveling to different fortresses, and Charlie's fighting different people, getting weird power. His fame is starting to grow, but he's starting to kind of maybe see some of the negative effects. And then Quincy starts to come in a little bit. You hear about Lord Ravenous, and everyone's kind of maybe starts racing towards the mountain. I think about like on Mars, what is it, Mount Olympus on Mars? That's like really tall, like taller than any mountain we've ever had. It's like, oh, how tall is Mount Olympus on Mars? It's insanely tall. But they all start racing towards this mountain. There's fights, there's battles. That's kind of where my brain is at. Like, what's the thing that leads them to this final fight? And then what's the resolution of that, as far as Charlie definitely gets in the suit, right? Quincy definitely gets betrayed by Lord Ravenous at some point in some way.
So that's where I think kind of the way that the last one ended, just in the same era. So the original guy's place is at that mountain.
Yeah.
They get to the mountain. Quincy's getting to the mountain because that's where they can open up that portal to the thing. He starts opening the portals. He gets the suit. They get it rigged up. The original villain, I think we called him. Oh, I can't remember what we called him.
Name.
Insert the name that we gave him last time. It was like Clint or something. Could be wrong. But anyways,
Clyde.
He's kind of
it's
like
Clyde.
Clyde. So Clyde. I was close.
You're close.
Clyde has been starting to trying to unify some kind of like a more of a civilized thing, right? And so he's kind of got a confederacy of some of these different groups that are kind of coming together now. They meet Quincy at the mountain. Quincy opens the thing up. He then gets betrayed by Lord Ravenous, gets killed. And now Lord Ravenous has the open thing. Now Charlie has the suit, and it kind of ends with, them coming up to this now final battle with then Lord Ravenous and all of the, allies of Quincy, coming down the mountain as more of them are pouring out, as then they're coming up to kind of meet them in battle, as then Charlie overcomes that thing, and, either becomes one with the suit or, activates the suit and, realizes, its power and what it can do with the different stuff, and then kind of emerges as the battle starts to clash, and that's it.
That's the end?
That's the end.
It needs a sequel.
Then it leaves it.
Yeah, it needs a sequel to a sequel, but I think that's good.
Yeah, it is pretty good. It's a pretty good story. I'd like to go back and see what's happening, on the original planet,
Right. Well, maybe one of us will draw a sequel next time.
Well, anyway, I really think we've developed really kind of a cool universe thing here. I like it.
Absolutely. It's going to take its place in the giant multiverse web thing that I'm making, hopefully before the end of the year.
Isn't it nice to say that now when you've got like a little over 11 months to do it?
Yeah, I know, right? It is pretty nice. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. If you liked this episode, if you thought that it was cool and good, had a great ending, or not great ending, if you didn't like this episode, let us know. Send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or message us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your suggestions, your ideas, and kind of how you think storytelling should be. And I just wanted to remind you, if you didn't like this episode, if you didn't like this story, if you don't like the podcast at all, just wait, because it gets better.